Thank you. I now invite the Honourable Prime Minister and Minister for Itaukei Affairs and Sugar Industry to make his statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my statement today is on the Christmas Island veteran, or the payment of some outstanding money to the Christmas Island veteran. But I thought before I start, I would just like to make a couple of comments about the debate that we had earlier on since we started our meeting this morning. I know that side of the house don't like this comparison, but I compare this August House to the military establishment. When you walk through the door, nobody really gives two hoots about your title, supposedly your blue blood. You walk through there, as in military establishment, and when you walk out, you can pick it up again, your ratu, your andi, and you walk out with it. This establishment is I see, something along that line. So it was very, very insulting to hear one of our members being insulted by across the room from that side with Itaukei insult, Kaisi. This is not good for this house. It doesn't augur well for the relationship that we want to establish here and for the people of Fiji. Maybe we should have a mirror outside the door, outside that door, Madam Speaker, so that when you walk in, have a look at the mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror. If you can see blue blood or whatever, royal blood running through your veins, then maybe you have the right to come and call everybody a Kaisi. If not, maybe you can do something. When you look at yourself in the mirror, do something about your posture. Maybe that will help. That is my advice this morning, to stop the insults within this house. That doesn't augur well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to rise in Parliament today to discuss another historic occasion in the life of our nation, which we celebrated just a couple of weeks ago, the special payment government has made to the veterans of Britain's nuclear testing on Christmas Island. This was a very special moment for me, as I said when I presented the checks to these people, Madam Speaker, both personally and as Prime Minister. And one that I will remember forever is one of the highlights of my time in office. Because, Madam Speaker, my government has righted a historic wrong. We have drawn a line under a painful episode in our history. We have brought justice to a brave and proud group of Fijians to whom a great injustice was done. Madam Speaker, the story is well known to many, but it is worth repeating on the floor of this House because of the hardship that these men, our fathers, grandfathers, uncles, and fellow Fijians went through a service to a colonial agenda, and we honor them by remembering them. And it's a well-known story, Madam Speaker. In 1958, a total of 278 Fijian servicemen were sent to take part in the British nuclear test program at Christmas Island, in what was then Gilbert Islands and is now called Kiribati. Madam Speaker, the backdrop of this operation was, of course, the international struggle between the East and the West for military dominance that was going on at the time, called the Cold War. And each side was determined to win the race to develop the most destructive weapons the world had ever seen. And not content with the terrifying destruction caused by the two atomic bombs dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, the great powers, of course, wanted to build bombs that could cause even more destruction. Madam Speaker, for us in the Pacific, this arms race has left a terrible and horrible legacy. It has terrible consequences in our region. We bear many of the scars from this unfortunate chapter in the world's history. And for us in Fiji, Madam Speaker, our most personal scars are from one episode in particular, and that is operational grapple. In a series of tests in and around Christmas Island in 1957 and 1958, the British successfully tested the world's first thermonuclear device, a hydrogen bomb, capable of much more destruction than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan. The 278 Fijians, of course, who took part in Operational Grapple, witnessed these explosions firsthand from the decks of a British aircraft carrier called HMS Warrior. And they were present when the biggest devices went off, of course. And even before the devastating effects of radiation exposures were fully known, it was clear to the men present that something was wrong. As I explained before, Madam Speaker, our own men were not measured for radiation at the time, but a pilot who flew through one of the mushroom clouds soon afterwards received a dose of radiation equivalent to more than 12,700 X-rays. And our men were wearing, I understand some of them were wearing T-shirts and shorts. Before long, Madam Speaker, the horrible effects of the radiation began to make themselves known. Some men reported hair loss and bleeding gums. Others developed skin diseases and blood disorders. And yet others were diagnosed with leukemia and other illnesses. Of course, our veterans, as we also know, were not the only people affected. Thousands of British, Australians, and New Zealand servicemen, scientists and construction workers were also exposed. We have seen the suffering that they've gone through in the lives of our men, and we have seen the struggle they have faced to win the justice they deserve, because our men have gone through it too. The legal battle, legal battle for recognition and compensation from the British government has involved many twists and turns over the years. In 2009, a High Court judge in Britain noted that many of the veterans were in their 70s, and that delay would make the trial even more difficult because the group was slowly dying out. He also recognized that what we know in Fiji to be true, that the veterans' call is for justice as much as it is for compensation. Although the judge went on to rule that the claimants could bring their case against the British government, this small victory quickly stalled. Because to this day, Britain, of course, has refused to pay compensation to anyone, despite successive surveys that have shown veterans suffering from a range of terrible ailments. Britain says too much time has passed since its events, and that was the reason for the stall in payment. We also found out, Madam Speaker, that a small ray of hope, of course, appeared last year when the British Prime Minister, David Cameron, finally acknowledged this moral challenge and said that the issue will be revisited. But as I've said, Madam Speaker, as we talked about it on this side of the House, we could not continue to wait for Britain to do the right thing. As far as Fiji is concerned, it was too late. Too much time has passed already, and time is not on our side. Too many have already gone to their graves without seeing justice done, and the ranks of the survivors are rapidly diminishing. We've got stats that out of the 278 Fijian soldiers and naval personnel, only 70 remain with us today. Madam Speaker, if we had waited for the politicians and bureaucrats in London to get their act together, it might well have been too late. And those who remain deserve justice, and Fiji as a nation is determined for them to finally get it. We need to erase this blight on our history. We need to lift the burden on our collective conscience, and that's why my government decided to intervene and award these survivors a modest token of what we can afford to finally acknowledge the great injustice that was done to them almost 6 decades ago. What they went through was not their fault, but we felt a responsibility to our fellow Fijians that could not be ignored. Madam Speaker, we know that this can never make up for the decades of suffering, but we hope it will go some way towards improving the quality of these men's lives in their twilight years, along with those of their families. Madam Speaker, the Fiji First Government does not turn its back on any Fijians, especially those who have suffered an injustice. On this side of the House, we are proud to be part of a government that is committed to giving substantive justice to every person. So in this case, we are proud to honor and recognize these men for their service to our nation. We salute them for their courage and persistence over the many years to get justice for themselves and their comrades who are no longer with us. Indeed, Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to report that news of our decision has already traveled around the world, and especially to Britain, where veterans are still locked in a bitter legal battle to win the same recognition we have now given our veterans. The announcement by the Fiji First Government was reported in many Britain's top media outlets, bringing this issue back into the spotlight where it should belong. And Madam Speaker, we cannot allow the voices pleading for justice to be silenced as they pass into history. Our Fiji veterans and their comrades from other countries are a living testament to this terrible chapter of our history. History records that not only the British, but other colonial powers such as the United States and France used the Pacific to test weapons of mass destruction. And the French continued nuclear testing, and the Pacific has laid this 1996 through its test program in French Polynesia. And Madam Speaker, I repeat the call that I made 2 weeks ago, never again. Nuclear testing is a form of madness that we must never again accept. Our people in the Pacific are suffering. We must never allow again this pattern of destructions to be repeated in the Pacific. Never again should we let our beautiful environment be the playground for destructive and terrible weapons such as that was tested in Christmas Island in 1958. And so we call on the industrialized nations to join with us in our commitment to make the Pacific nuclear free. Madam Speaker, Fiji will always be on the side of those nations pressing for the dismantling of the world's nuclear arsenals. And to finally draw a line under the era that our nuclear veterans witnessed for themselves. And so, Madam Speaker, I call on all members of this Honourable House to join me in thanking these men for their services and for their perseverance and patience. And I'm sure that at all times, like all hope, I'm sure that at times it felt like all hope was lost, that they would never receive the recognition, of course, they deserve. It has taken too long, and these men have endured much suffering through the years. But, Madam Speaker, unlike past Fijian and British governments, we did not let the matter rest. Justice has finally been served, and for that we can all be proud as a nation. Madam Speaker, with those words, I conclude my statement, thanking you for giving me the floor and your attention.
Thank you, Honourable Prime Minister. Before I give the floor to the representative from the opposition, I am disturbed that words which I did not hear that are unparliamentary were being dished out in this august body. And I'm sure we are all here to keep this House a respectable place, and that words used in this House are respectable, so that people who voted us here know that we do have a respect for this august House. So with that note, I will now ask the leader of the opposition or representative to reply to the statement, and I give you 5 minutes.
Honourable Speaker, I think this is one of the few times that I would agree with the Honourable Prime Minister. And on this occasion, in assistance in the assistance that has been given to those that are needed to be honored and to be acknowledged for their sacrifice. These veterans have had much suffering, agonies, and difficulties. Where justice was required, justice was given. So I thank the Honorable Prime Minister. This is not a party issue, it is a national issue. And for those of us from the opposition party, we agree with the move that the Prime Minister has made in acknowledging them and then using the budget from the government in terms of assisting those that have given their lives, they have dedicated it, and they have lived in dignified silence up until this time. So I would like to thank the Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you.
I now invite the leader of the National Federation Party or his representative.
Madam Speaker, we also agree with the Honorable Prime Minister on this, and we endorse all of his sentiments on the substantive matter. And Madam Speaker, to touch very briefly on the other part of the Honorable Prime Minister's presentation and your direction from the Chair, I do agree that this is the House of Equals, Madam Speaker. We were all elected here, and if you want respect, you must also give it. And I'll just use the word of the Honorable Attorney General. We'll have to contextualize what went on this morning. If we're told to shut up and owe our allegiance to something that it was not, then we don't expect us to sit here like doormats and say, yes, my lord. We don't, Madam Speaker. We are all equals, I agree. And this is not a military institution, Madam Speaker. The military is beneath this House.